suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
Walter's got Nards!
Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about horror sequels. When I say horror sequels, I don't mean a sequel to every horror movie. I want to talk about mostly the sequels to the horror franchises like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, etc. Those are the sequels that I want to talk about because we all know that most of the time the originals are the best movies in the franchises. That's usually the case, but there are some cases where even if a movie is not as good as the original, the sequels of those movies are still better than other franchises' second movies, and that's what I kind of want to touch on today. But also, there are some instances, from my opinion obviously, there are some instances where the sequel outdoes the original, and that is the case with at least one of my movies today. Now, I'm no stranger to the Halloween franchise, and everyone knows that Halloween is my favourite horror movie. But when it comes to Halloween 2, I think this is where the downfall lies with Halloween 2, because I hold the original Halloween up to such a high standard. When I saw Halloween 2, as much as I liked the movie, and I loved it when I first saw it, but as much as I liked the movie, it was a major step down from the first movie, and that's not 100% off-putting, but when it comes to judging sequels, because Halloween 2 was such a drop in quality, then I don't hold Halloween 2 up there as one of the best sequels in horror franchises. It is a good sequel, some would call it great, but because it was a massive step down, I just don't see it as one of the best sequels. Now, this isn't going to be a ranking video or anything, I'm just giving an opinion on some of the popular sequels that are out there. But when it comes to Halloween 2, it is one of the most popular and probably one of the most loved sequels in horror franchise history. For me, it's not up there. If you look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 as well, similar vibes I have with that as I did with Halloween 2, and the fact that the original is held in such high regards. With what happened with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 almost seems like an abomination. Now, I think the movie is decent, but the tone is obviously a lot different from the original movie. I know that was the intention of Tobe Hooper, but it wasn't what I was expecting to see when I first saw the movie. It is a good sequel, but I would probably say out of all the big hitters, this is possibly the worst sequel out of all the big franchises. Next up, we'll look at Friday the 13th. Now, this is quite unique because Friday the 13th went in a different direction, possibly for the better, especially for being a franchise, because the first movie had Pamela Voorhees, and then the second movie, the new villain was Jason Voorhees, Pamela's son, and obviously it was Jason throughout the rest of the franchise. So if it wasn't for Jason, there probably wouldn't be a franchise, but the guy didn't even exist as a man in the first movie. So they've made a major change, not a change in tone, but a major change to the storyline, and I think the storyline wise, the change was better. But with Friday the 13th, I do like the original movie, but when I watched both movies, I believe that the second movie is a little bit better than the first movie, and that is a popular opinion because I see it online all the time. The first movie is not considered the best in the franchise, possibly because it is Pamela Voorhees. I do love the first movie, very nostalgic, one of the first horror movies I ever watched, one of the first horror movies that I ever bought with my own money on VHS, so I do have a lot of fond memories for the first movie. There's something about the second movie that's a little bit better for me. So when it comes to sequels, I think Friday the 13th was a good platform to do it better. If you look at A Nightmare on Elm Street, this is where it kind of divides some fans, not all fans. The original is considered the best, etc, etc. I've not covered A Nightmare on Elm Street on the channel yet. I will do that eventually. I will need to watch them all again. But I know that the second movie was considered terrible for a long time. It became this cult followed movie throughout the years though. It got better with age. When I first watched the second movie, I think I possibly watched the second movie before the first movie. This was in the mid to late 80s, so I don't remember too much about it. But I remember being absolutely terrified of the second movie as a kid. That bus scene at the very beginning, I had nightmares for that for years. So there's so many memorable scenes for part 2 that it's become this fan favourite in the franchise. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I like it better than the first movie, but I don't think it's a major downstep like Halloween 2 was, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was. As far as I remember, again, I'll have to go back and watch them, it's possibly on par with the first movie, in my opinion. So it is one of the better sequels out there that doesn't downgrade too much, if there is downgrades in the movie. Freddy was a lot scarier in this one as well. Just from things that I remember, a couple of years ago was the last time I watched it. There's so many fond memories I have for A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 that I don't even understand the hate whatsoever. And lastly, I want to talk about a movie that probably improves on every aspect of what the first movie was, and that is Child's Play 2. Now, yes, some people will consider the first movie as their favourite, and that's absolutely fine. It is a really good movie, but I just feel that if you're going to improve in a franchise, you do it the way they done it in Child's Play 2. Not only did they bring back the main character in Andy, he's a little bit older now. So if you watched the first movie as a kid, as I did, I followed Andy because I felt like I was like Andy and I was a young kid watching the movie. You bring in a teenager with Kyle, so teenagers who watch horror movies at the time will relate to those characters. So you've got now a younger audience and a teenage audience. Probably shouldn't be watching these movies, but we did because it was the late 80s, the early 90s. So we watched these movies and we had that fan base and we had that age group that were watching these movies and enjoying these movies. So already you had an improved amount of audience. Then you had Chucky, who was obviously the best part of the first movie. You give him more screen time, you give him better lines, you make him funnier, you make him scarier, you make him look better as well. So you're improving on the bad guy in the movie. Then you have to improve your surroundings. Now, I'm not saying the acting's better in part 2, it's probably not. You know, Chris Sarandon was a fantastic actor who wasn't in the second one, but you've got a group of actors who are still good, like Jenny Agutter. You've still got these characters that you still latch yourself onto, but the location and the scenarios that they're in part 2 is what got me. You know, that big house, big colourful house, sort of pastel-like colours, child-friendly colours, in a horrible environment. You know, it's very contrasting at times throughout the movie, and then the finale takes place at the big factory, which is one of the most memorable scenes in any Chucky movie, any franchise movie. So I personally think that Child's Play 2 was an improvement in almost every aspect. Therefore, if I'm looking at the sequels, and I know this isn't a ranking, but if somebody asked me what's the best sequel in horror franchise history, I would have to go with Child's Play 2. Now, yes, like I said, there are other sequels out there and possibly other horror franchises that I haven't mentioned, or other horror movies that I won't mention because there's too many to mention. But leave your comments down below, guys. Out of the big franchises, what's your favourite sequel? What sequel improved the most? Doesn't have to be better than its original. It just has made an improvement over other sequels. Let me know what you think, and also let me know if there's any other horror sequels, doesn't have to be franchises, that you believe to be a massive improvement over their original. And as always, guys, thanks a lot for watching again. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.